and it's going to give me a little countdown. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Wednesday. Welcome to Texas Book Talk. I am your hostess with the mostest, maybe. I don't know. Heather Renee May. And I'm super excited to have you here this evening. I have a really special guest that I can't wait to introduce you to. Her name is Tonya Kappes, and she is a prolific author. I think over 175 books. I mean, I don't even know how to write that many books, but not only that, they're like these wonderful Southern fried murder mysteries. And I don't know how she comes up with like ways of killing all these people, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to bring Tonya on so we can introduce her to y'all. Hey, Tonya.
Hey, Heather. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you.
And I'm so glad to be here.
Yes. And do you know, so the way that I found out about you, years, like when I first got into my 18-foot travel trailer in COVID, and I hadn't yet written my book, and I was in a used bookstore. Oh, hello. Yes.
Rowena will just show up. Yeah. she's part of the RV life. Go ahead, COVID. I'm sorry. We just ignore her. She thinks that she is the Tonya Kappes book, so just ignore her.
No, I love that. I feel like that's a normal thing. Like on Zoom at work, everyone's cats, they always do this. They, or they'll stop and you'll just see their butt. And it's like, that's nice. So
it's terrible. So go ahead. I'm sorry. She rudely interrupted you. So during COVID.
Yeah. So I was at a used bookstore. I don't even remember where, somewhere in the US. And I came across a paperback copy of one of your books. And I was like, campers? Glampers? Murder? Let's do it. So
we have to.
Yes. And I loved it so much. So I was like really excited to like, I don't know, get introduced back to you and what you're doing. I saw your I can't get all the titles down. The 4th of July one that came out.
The fireworks, you're talking about in the camper series, not the holiday series. Okay. So yeah, fireworks and forgery for sure. Yeah.
That was
just
really
came out recently. So
yes.
Well, that was the last one that came out. I have another one coming out in a month or 2 months. So.
Okay. Before we there, let's rewind, because like I would love to hear how the heck you got started in this whole journey writing. Let's start there.
Oh gosh. Okay. So it's just crazy. So I didn't bring normally what I usually bring. I didn't know what you're going to ask. So I apologize, but I was never meant to be a writer. I actually have report cards from the 70s from my teachers that I still have. They're yellowed and they're these big report cards. And they said, if Tonya would have just turned in one of the 4 required book reports, she would have passed English. And I'm like, okay. So, but back then I didn't care. And so, as all things happen, is I grew up in a small town and I went to college to be a teacher and I graduated. And then I got married, like, most small town girls do. They get married. And then I had a son and I got divorced. And that was really hard. I did not have anyone in my family divorced. And I thought, I've always been an upbeat person. And I said, oh my gosh, I found myself in a dark place. And they, in Kentucky, you get joint custody. And so when my son would go to his dad's every other weekend is when he went there, then I found myself in a dark place. And so I went to the doctor. I'm like, you have to give me medicine. And she's like, no. And I'm like, yes. And she's like, no, you need a hobby. And I'm like, I do not have a hobby. I don't want to do this. So I did try to go to knitting with my sister. And if I could have stabbed the instructor with the needles, I probably would have. So I should have known right there, a little foreshadowing, because I am not a good knitter. So then I was frustrated. I went back to the doctor and she's like, Tonya, you need a hobby. And I'm like, the only thing I really know how to do is to go to college. I loved college. So I went back to college and I got a child therapy degree. But I was in my 30s and I still have not read a book. I was not a card carrying librarian holder, nothing. And at the time, there was a Walden's bookstore. There wasn't all the fancy bookstores they have now.
Yes.
And so I met a young girl, which a while ago when you and I were talking before this, talking about wine, which we'll get to, she was a young lady who I'm still friends with now. And it said, oh, my friends and I have a book club. She was in my college class and also becoming a therapist. And she said, we have wine. I go, oh gosh, I don't even like reading. And she said, but we have wine and chocolate. We talk like about the book for the first 5 minutes. And that's it. And I'm like, what time did you say that book club was? So I went to book club and they would have it on the weekends that my son was gone to his dad's. But it was fun because it was only once a month. And so I still never bought the book. I never picked up the book. I never bought the book. And so I just was going for the friendship. But then it was only like 2 or 3 hours of the weekend. And so one day I decided that I would buy the book. So I went to Walden's and I bought the book. And it was a romance, like a women's fiction, like chick lit really is what they were called back then. And I remember waking up. I'd gone to church that morning. I came home and I found myself laying back in bed, just waiting for that 7 o'clock hour for my son to be dropped off. And I looked over at the book and I thought, I guess I could read this book. And it'd been sitting there for a couple of weeks on my nightstand. And I picked it up. And the next thing I know, the door's opening and it's my son. I had no idea that I had been reading for that long. Now, I'm not a quick reader. I'm still not a quick reader, but I escaped. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So then my love of books just took off. So what happened was that I started stalking that author, like we all do. And there was no Facebook and there was no social media, but she had a blog and you could win prizes on her blog. So I started winning prizes and she knew I was from Kentucky. She decided that she was coming to Kentucky to open up the Kentucky Book Festival. And she emailed me and said, hey, I'm coming to Kentucky. I would love to stay with you. And I'm thinking, she had a Lifetime movie. I'm thinking, I could be just some hill jack, which I am, but the kind that kill you. And so she was like, it's going to be a lot of fun, this, that, and the other. And then she started sending packages to my house and saying, well, I want you to put these bags together for me for my readers. I'm going to host this dinner for like my best, 20 readers that are coming. And I was like, oh my gosh, this. So she came and I watched her and she made me feel so good. She made me feel like I mattered. Her books made me feel good. I read everything she wrote. She just really brought me into her fold as a friend, although, we don't want to cross that line with our readers a lot, right? But she made me feel like that. And I was in and among, although she stayed at a house, I was among these 20 other people that were also feeling how I was feeling. And when she would talk to me, I felt like she was listening. And so that really set me on crazy town because I'm thinking, oh gosh, maybe I could do this. So what happened was that her name is Jane Porter. I don't know if you know who she is, but her name is Jane Porter. So years later, I'm still in book club. I'm remarried and I have 4 boys. This is why I don't write romance because I have 4 boys. Don't want to write romance. So anyway, so what happened was that my book club and I was around 2001. We were discussing some things that were going on locally. And I was telling some really funny stories about the area that was having some riots and different things like that, and how sad I was that these were happening. And they're like, oh my gosh, Tonya, they were laughing because they're really funny stories. And they just couldn't believe it. They said, you should put that in a book. And I was like, what? They're like, you should write a book. Like all my book clubs, same girls from previous years. And I'm like, there is no way. They said, oh, Tonya, that would be hilarious for somebody to read. So I always say maybe a little too much liquid courage at midnight. I woke my husband up and I said, do you think I could help just one person escape if I wrote a story? And he said, yeah, go to bed. I do. But But what had happened was previous to that, he had, when you know, host book club, you get to pick the next book. So I had gone to Walden's, again, Walden's, no Barnes and Noble, Walden's, and I picked up a stack of books and he picked one up and he's like, Tonya, how many books did you buy? We are feeding a family of 6. And I'm like, I don't know. I can't pick one. And they all look so good. I won't eat for a week. But anyways, and so he picked one up and he started reading it and he said, you could tell a story better than this is written. And I said, Eddie, there's totally 2 different things in writing and, you know, reading and telling a story. So again, it was 2 people within a 2-hour period that encouraged me to write a story. So the next day, 2 of my little boys were in Pee Wee football. You couldn't leave because they might get hurt, they might have had to pee, or they need a snack. So you had to stay there until they got a little bit older. And right then I went back to Walden's and got a journal, a beautiful journal and pencil, because I did not have a typewriter. I had a BlackBerry, if that tells you the time period. And I started writing my first book under an oak tree. Now, with that said, I did not know that you had to have an editor. I did not know that you needed an agent. I did not know that you had to send it off to publishing houses. So we'll fast forward to years later. I had a publishing deal and learned the ropes. It took me a while to learn the ropes. I joined a local group, and my publisher, I'm still friends. Now I'm really friends with this Jane Porter, who I still love today. And I had a book deal on that book that my friends told me to write. And I did get a book deal, and then we parted ways, Heather, about 2 months before release.
Oh.
And I couldn't believe it. I remember it clearly. Like, I don't know about you in Texas, but here in Kentucky, we have the best gift shops in the hospital. So I went to the hospital to get my mother a Mother's Day gift. And I will never forget it. It comes across my BlackBerry that we are no longer in collaboration with this book. And I'm standing there getting a Mother's Day gift from my mom. And I put the thing away and I'm just walking out in tears. And the lady at the counter, she's like, are you okay? I mean, I'm sure they thought that I got some news about a loved one in the hospital dying or something, because I was crying, but it was not. It was about a book. And so I get out to my car and I call my husband. I mean, I did everything short of giving my life to these people. Like, no, I'll change what you want me to change. I'll do what you want me to do. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I came home and my husband had a Sony e-reader. And he's not a reader. Somebody had gifted it to him. And he had turned it on one day and up popped a short story. And this was probably 2010. And he said, have you ever heard of self-publishing? I'm like, I cannot self-publish. That's vanity publishing. So he said, well, this guy's doing it. And I bet I could figure out how to format and do all these things. He's an electrician and very handy. So he started formatting this book of mine, and when he pulled it up on this tablet, it looked beautiful. So I called my friend up, Jane Porter, on the phone, and now she has, you know, a couple of movies and all these books. And she said, I would love to read it and give you a cover quote. And at the time, cover quotes were very important. Nowadays, I don't feel like they're as important, but at the time they were. And I was going to be a self-published author. And I did it. And I had my BlackBerry, and we did it. And so my husband and my friend also had a friend that was a graphics artist. I'm like, I don't know really what the size needs to be. All those things in the early days, nobody knew. We just kind of cut and paste.
There wasn't as much information out.
No, there was not. So I get this email. We published it, and it was a Saturday morning. We published it, and then in a week, I get this email. And my son had baseball practice at this time. Again, it was kind of like the late spring. And we're kind of summerish time, because we had just gotten out of May to June, and that we were getting that thing up. So we had baseball. And he had a game, and my parents lived 2 hours from me. So they came up, and I'm trying to explain to my parents, you know, this is what I'm doing. And they're like, you're doing what? And it's going to be for sale where? And it's not going to be in a store. And I'm like, no, it's just this thing. I don't know how it's going to go, but we're going to do it. And because that's always how I've been. So years prior, when I was depressed, it was so unusual for me to be that way. So, anyways, what happened was I'd gotten an email before I left, and the guy said, my wife really loved your book. I hope I can help you sell a few copies. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for her. Okay, that's my one reader today. That's my one reader. That's my one reader. I did my job. She liked my book. That's all I cared about. And I'm at the baseball field. And back in the day, you could get on the dashboards of all of the things now. And there was rumors of a Kindle coming to the play. It hadn't come in play yet. So it was rumors of it, but you could still self-publish through all the channels. And you could see in real time when somebody bought your book. So when one of my friends would say, oh, I just bought your book, I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Now you can't see it quite in real time. But, and so I was showing my mom and my dad, and I refreshed it on this BlackBerry. And all of a sudden, it was like 5,000 copies for the day. And I was like, okay. Then I was refreshing, and I kept refreshing. It was going up, and I mean by thousands. And I was like, we have broken Amazon. Something has happened. We have done something so wrong. We have broken Amazon. I said, I've got to go home. So I left them at the baseball game with my husband. I go back to look at the file and look at it. And I'm like, what in the world? At this time, it was like 30,000 copies. It was ridiculous. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. So I thought about that email. And I emailed this guy back and I said, I am so sorry to ask you this, but my numbers have jumped. And the only thing that I could think of was your email and your wife. And he said, oh, yeah, I started a little I saw this coming down the pipeline, and I started a little newsletter called E-Reader News Today. And I have a few followers, and I would love, and I've just put you on there. And he said, I would love to continue to put you on, and if you would just promote me. So we went on like this joint campaign without each other really doing anything. But for the next couple of years, I would promote him and every once in a while he'd get on there and promote me. But we really never kept in touch, all the time. But he was so gracious, and it was amazing and that was my start. And I never looked back until I wrote a mystery series called the Southern Ghostly Mystery Series. And HarperCollins came calling, and they were like, oh, we know it's self-published, but we'd love to try to purchase this from you. And they had not bought a self-published series. And it's hard to go traditional when you are in charge of everything. And so we made some really good, I wanted to own the books. I wanted to own the characters. It was, just a deal by deal. I set what I wanted to make. And it was really a roof shattering deal for the indie publishers, and what I still call self-publishing, but what they like to be called now is indie publishing. And so I took a deal with them and loved them. I loved them a lot, but there wasn't really anything they could do for me that I wasn't doing for myself. And so
let me ask something about that, because I wonder if so they bought it after the fact. So you'd already done everything. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, their barrier to, besides trying to get picked up, but the barrier to that is like, you don't have any control over your artwork, over any of the things. And also you get less royalties. So I think a lot of people now that are indie publishing are realizing if they put in the work themselves and the PR and all the stuff they have to do anyway, that they might as well make a little bit more money. But I think,
right. Well, and it wasn't a bad deal. I make 50%. I still make 50% every month. And I want to be paid monthly. Like I'm used to be paid monthly through Amazon. I'm still Amazon exclusive when they came out with KU. And then I had full cover control, and I loved them. I really did love them, and I still love them. But, there's nothing they can do that I can't do for myself at this point. So, but needless to say, I always had my one reader in mind, and that is exactly what I did. I set out to build a community, and I set out to just reach one reader. I even started my own. This year will be the 10th year of my own reader event. I rent a train somewhere around the United States. The first year I did it, I just said, oh, I just want to meet my readers, because they'd be like, oh, where are you going to be here? Where are you going to be here? I didn't even take books the first 2 years. And they're like, why aren't you bringing books to sell? And I'm like, well, because that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is for me to hang out with you, because you're allowing me to do this. And then years later, here we are, we're still here, 100 and something books later, like you were saying, a lot of fun things coming down the pipe that I can't talk about right now, but, things that are so exciting that these readers have allowed me to do. And without them, it would have never happened. And I was able to quit my job full time. My husband was able to retire after 35 years. We RV, we travel, and he works for our business now. And it's just, I'm so connected to my readers. I really am. It's a community that I take very, very seriously. I Zoom call with them every month that want to join. I have a Patreon, and we're over there. They can join for $1, and the dollar goes to a charity. We pick for a charity each month. There's several other tiers as well. But I learned from that author, who is still around and thriving, that she owns Tule Publishing. I don't know if you know who Tule is, but she owns Tule. And so she really made me feel, see, I get emotional because I can't express to you what my readers mean to me. And that's it. I just can't, I can't, they have done above and beyond. My dad was in the hospital. He was in there with COVID. He was dying. And one of my friends, I call them my friends, I don't even call them readers, worked at the hospital. I had never met her, because they live 2 hours away, and she didn't even work in my daddy's unit. And she would go in there and clean his hearing aids out and take him to things that she didn't have to do. One of my sons now lives in Georgia, and I have a couple of readers that are down there that go in, pop in. He's a university NCAA Division I basketball coach, and they'll pop in. One's a professor there, and I've got to meet them. I travel around to campgrounds with Sisters on the Fly. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sisters on the Fly. Yeah. This was going to take longer than a 30-minute chat. And I know you RV, so you know Sisters on the Fly. So I've been to a lot of their meetups.
Yeah.
I go to a lot of their meetups and do book signings there, and readers come. And we just have a really blast. So your one question that you've asked me has taken us 22 minutes, because there is no short way around it. There is no short way around how I feel about them. And, it's ridiculous.
Let me share with you some of the chat in the channel. So as you were talking,
Lauren
says she loves us.
I do. I love Lauren. And Lauren has a great puppy.
Yes, she
does. And Jeannie, I just saw her recently here in Cincinnati.
And got a
card. Oh, I love Amanda. Oh, I do love all these people.
Everyone, people. Yes, I love that. And I have to say, this is such an inspiration for me as like a new author. I mean, my third book is coming out in October, but I feel like a newbie. I'm still figuring things out. I am also indie published, but part of what I love, because my books are set in Texas, in the Hill Country,
and that you're in an RV, so and it's romance, but they like all my girls and guys. I have a lot of guys, and all my friends, they read everything, because we have a monthly book club too. I would do it all.
There's so much I want to learn, and I have to say, I might, stalk you, unabashedly stalk you and learn from you and how you, interact, and how you really communicate and connect with your readers, because I feel like that's one of the reasons when I do my book tours, I don't go to bookstores. I go to like markets and events and wineries and places, and I love talking to people, and then they bug me. They want the next story, which I love, because it makes me realize that it's important, because sometimes you can just be like, really, why should I be doing this? But like, it's those people that you touch. And like, my first story also had to do with me overcoming a divorce. And, I remember being at Fredericksburg Trade Days, which is a market that I do. It's a monthly market on the third weekend. And she came on, like, she was just in tears. She's like, I need to read this book so bad. I'm going through this right now. And like, we're hugging it out. And it's just like, I mean, it's those interactions to me that are why I'm doing it as well. It's like, making money or covering expenses and all of that, that's great. That's, but I do have a day job, and it's okay for me. It's like just having building that community. And that's something that I'm going to try to lean into more.
And
So it's
every
really
day I just say, who am I going to help today? Who am I going to,
uplift.
the one reader a day, just one reader a day is all I want to escape. And I've always said, no matter what you're going through, if you're having a great day, whether you're having a terrible day, I just say, who am I going to help escape? And they teach me a lot.
Yeah.
They it's not just me helping them escape, but for instance, I have a patron that we were just on a call Sunday, and she had her granddaughter sitting on her lap, Anita, and she's just such a great grandmother. And I just watched her as we're doing our Zooms. And I thought, golly, I could learn a lot from her. I don't have any grandchildren yet. My kids are 31 to 25 and 27 twins in the middle. And so I don't have those grandkids, but I watch them, and we are just, my readers span ages. It's not the typical cozy 55 to 85. And so it's amazing. They're amazing, and I learn something from each of them every time. So it's not just them, escaping. I never thought that I would get so much knowledge for such a group of women and men.
That's so neat. I love that. And your story. So the thing about it is that you kill off a lot of people in your story.
With humor.
And you have a little Southern sass, a little Southern.
Yeah, just a little bit, just a smidgen.
Just a smidgen. I love it so much. I mean, they are really, really fun to read. And I think that obviously we really felt this way in the last few years with COVID and everything going on, that we really, all the negative news. I think now we could probably say the same thing with elections. They're never fun. So it's always a good time to escape, to go somewhere where you're like, you feel like you know the characters, especially if it's a series, and you can just dive in and just let the rest of the stuff go away. I do think it's such a valuable thing.
And that's what they really like, I think, is what I hear from all of my series is, and I'm on brand, but I'll tell you what, Heather, if I could say one thing, is my books are not my brand. I'm my brand. I'm the brand. And they come with me. They see my cat. They see me washing dishes. They see me being Tonya. They know my kids. They grew up with my kids. I mean, you think about it, I'm 53, and we've been doing this since I was 30 something. So they've been around the block a time or two with us, and we've all been through deaths, and with my daddy and my mom, and had a hard wreck, but she's not deceased, thank God. But my mama had a really horrific car wreck a few years ago, and had a 5% chance of life. And my little small post office up here, which is smaller than my RV, he calls me because, of course, I moved home for those months, and then she's thriving now. You'd have never known. But he said, Tonya, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on, but you have got sacks of mail up here. And it was amazing that I could just read my mama while she was in the hospital, all of their letters and cards. We had them posted up all over the hospital room, and it was during COVID, and the nurses came in, would chit chat with us, and they're just so special, and I just get so much from them. But I'm the brand, and I think a lot of authors, a lot of writers lose that. They want it just to be about the colors or about their specific, and a lot of authors do not agree with me on that, or writers. But I think I just want to be like, again, I just care about helping them escape. And like I said, that reader on Sunday, Anita, with that grandchild in her lap, and she is such a good granny. I don't know what they call her, but just me learning from them, and then just really calling them friends to me, is what they've become. So I don't mind letting them into my world, but as an author, as a new author, and especially what you can talk about, I don't know how much time you have, but now that you're going to go back to full-time RVing, which is really cool. Everybody on here, that's my people's. Heather was a full-time RVer, and then ended up buying a brick and mortar, and now she's going back into it. So she's going to be a lot of fun to follow, I imagine. But that's what they love. They love the, going to the campground with me. My cat walks on a leash, just like right now. I'm like, okay, we can show you up there. There's Rowena, and there's, I've got all the things, cat fruit,
I love
and they love all that. And when I go out of town or I can't be able to do something or have access, my husband will jump on and he'll take over. And, so I think being a little personable and letting people know that you're a real person just like them. And,
yeah.
again, just really grateful for them. Because really, I'm not some big fancy. I mean, I've not read the Jane Austen books. I've not read any of the Harper Lee books. I am not well read. I'm not, and I don't care. I write, what I know, and I write to escape. And I'm not going to be the person that they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that mystery was amazing. But I can say I've got a lot of really great things coming down the pipeline that they're going to be so excited about. And I can't wait to share all those things. And I think we've done all right. I think we have done all right.
I think it's you have absolutely done so well. And like,
I appreciate that.
Still growing. I mean, that's just it. Like,
yeah.
And the fact that you agreed to chat with me, someone who is like, not a best-selling author.
No, I don't care about none of that. I don't even think about that kind of stuff. But I love a good chat. But when I saw your post, and you had just posted about my release, and I'm like, wait, what? You have a podcast? What's this about? It just sounded like I needed to get the podcast because I love to walk, and I walk in my woods all the time, and I'm always doing podcasts. I always listen to them. I'm like, well, this is a new podcast, and it's Texas, so it's Southern. That makes me really want to listen. So I popped in my earphones, and then the next thing I know is that you contact me, and I'm super glad. I'll chit chat anytime to anybody. I'm not the author that is shy.
Bring your own wine, coffee, or otherwise.
That's right.
And I love it. I'm going back to like the author, I feel like this whole conversation, I do want to I have some book covers to show. I want to talk a little bit about your series. I knew we would go over.
Well, I ain't got nothing else to do.
Going back to the whole community thing, I think that, it is a fine line. It's something that's difficult for folks to have the connections with their readers or their followers, but then also feel like they have a sense of privacy as well. And it's kind of a fine line. I think it also depends on the type of books you write too. I don't know, because I feel like because my books are set in real places, they're set, there's real Texas wineries in my books. So you can actually go and support these local wineries and support the families that they love. And I get to go drink the wine and hang out with them and drive my RV around. And yes, if you're in the state of Texas in October, look for a big Class A that's going to have a wine bottle wrapped on the side. And on the back, it says, if you're stuck behind me, get a free chapter. And there's going to be a QR code because, Class A's don't go very fast.
Oh, yeah. We got all the RV tricks.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's, it really, there's so much that I'm getting from this and that I definitely am going to follow up with you on about. I want to make sure that anyone who has any questions, please post them in the chat. I'm following the chat is just full of love. So there's a lot.
I love them. I'll have to go back and rewatch it.
Yes.
Shout outs to all of them.
And I just, you have a few different series going on. I did want to just show a couple of the covers. I had put this in our, but the camper series was one that I think it might've been this one that I picked up, the Motorhomes, Maps and Murder from,
love it.
But it had a different cover. I'm not sure.
I think the map wasn't on it. So we started. So my cover artist at the very beginning of these books was just the camper with the name, and then she got more and more involved as the series grew, and she's like, "This needs a Botox." I'm like, "Okay." So then we just totally Botoxed them, is what she called it, and then she just went back and added new things with the same campers.
I love it.
And then we had the spinoff of that. The Holiday Cozy Mystery series. That's a spinoff of the camper series.
Okay.
But that follows Violet Reinhammer, who was the journalist in the camper series. She
Mhm.
wore me down. I mean, she wore me out at night, keeping me up. Like, I got to have my own series. I'm like, no. And so finally she won. But I took her out of Daniel Boone National Forest, which is I write all my stories are set in Kentucky. And they're
Mhm.
all kind of, they're also real places in my stories. And so I have a lot of readers that my friends that will send me pictures of the places that they've been, or they will say, I went to the Daniel Boone because of you, and we went hiking, and guess what we did? Or we're passing Clay's Ferry, and they'll take a picture of it.
I love
So yeah, so we have done a lot of really fun things. It's the same, but all my books are set in Kentucky.
I love that so much.
Yeah, thank you.
The other one that's just came out, right? Or is it
Yes.
Brave as
I
All Get Out?
love Kenny. Now, Kenny Lowry is so special. My last name, my maiden name, my real name is Tonya Kappes, but my maiden name was Lowry. And so
Okay.
if you were to take the town of Cottonwood and you put it on the map, my small town of Nicholasville, it is the exact same streets. So the
Oh my,
exact same name of the cemetery, everything. So of course, folks at home love that. So that's a very special series, and that's a paranormal series. So she's a small town sheriff, and she was really thought that there was no crime for the 3 years. It's a 4-year elected term in Kentucky. And so she thought she was really a bad because there was no crime in the town of Cottonwood until one day there was 2 crimes in one day, and she obviously couldn't. She's like, what is going on? And throughout the course of the first few chapters, you find out that her grandfather, who used to be the town sheriff years earlier and had passed away, was a ghost scaring off any would-be criminals and crime while her first 3 years in term. But when 2 crimes happened at once, he couldn't be in 2 places at once. So now she has a ghost deputy.
oh my
So
gosh. I love
yeah,
it so
it's a fun series.
I mean, we could go on and on about like all my questions about writing mysteries, writing the, there's a whole trick to that. There's a whole, format that I you know,
Well, there is, but I don't follow that. I know people are like, "Oh, Tanya, do you follow the hero's journey and then the structure of the mystery?" And I'm like, "No," and I don't. Again, Heather, I wasn't trained to be a writer, and so I just do it the way I would want to read it.
yeah.
And they're not, um, they
Comes
don't follow
It
the.
probably comes across more authentic that way too. Like I feel like, yeah,
Yeah,
I
and it was so funny because my books are only 50,000 to 60,000 words,
yeah,
and HarperCollins was like 50,000 is good with us, and I'm like, well, if it's good with HarperCollins, who is the biggest, then it should be good enough for all of my mysteries. So that's why they're quick reads, and they're not, they don't follow that, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And when some people say, "Oh, I found the killer," I'm like, okay, great. I wasn't trying to keep you from the killer. I'm trying to get you to see why it happened and
yeah,
how we get to the end. And so sometimes I really try to let them figure out, and sometimes I don't. And then sometimes you let those Easter eggs in there. You're like, I know if they follow this Easter egg in the middle of the book, they're going to know who did it. But that's
yeah.
okay because now they're going to say, well, how did that happen and why? And I'm taking them on the journey.
I have
I'm
to
not trying to make them sleuths.
Yeah, I have to say, so the first 2 books in my series was more romance. It's like a Hallmark kind of story. But this third one that's coming out, I took a year off or so, almost 2 years. And so this third one, it's worth the wait because it's like this mystery on the wine trail, and it was really fun. And there's sort of love, but it's not really anyway. Don't want to give anything away, but it's more like more about the mystery and the tension and stuff going on, and
Yeah.
patriotism and all the stuff, and like, Texas versus California, and all the things that was really fun to write about. That's like actual things that are going on in the wine trail, but like,
Yeah.
doing it in a fun, engaging way. But it was really fun to write a mystery, like figure out how can you, build these threads without giving it away, and like give just enough, and then like make it, enough that they're shocked,
Yeah.
maybe a little, like, it's really fun.
It's crazy. So I do have the thread of a romance, obviously, in there. So I have one Patreon, and her name is Linda, and she's always like, Tanya, you could let Hank and May, now that they're married, kiss a little more. And I'm like, oh, they might give each other the side eye. I don't know. but they're in Patreon, which in February I always do love notes from the others. And it gets, as spicy as Tonya can get it. So they get all those things in our Patreon, like all the love letters and all the fun stuff. But I also write a daily serial. I've started writing Violet in the holiday series just for them. Because I'm like, okay, Violet, if you're going to get a series, it's not going to be published. I'm just going to write it for the Patreons. Well, of course it's published, but I write it for them first. And they don't know this. So if any of them are listening, which Lauren and a couple of the other people that you had up there are Patreons. So they're reading the Patreon, the story now that'll come out in a few months. And I totally was like in bed last night. And one of the main characters that is new, her name is Bedelia. And she's like, I am not Amelia's sister. I am her best friend from college, from culinary, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, so halfway through this, I have totally changed it. So they won't know that till tonight because I've got to upload the days today. So I totally changed it. She is no longer the sister. And so I've got to put a disclaimer. But that's what happens is I always write these stories, like you said. And I'm like, oh, so then they're getting them as I'm writing them. They're not edited. Like I will sit here tonight and I will write a chapter and then I'll throw it up, right? It's not edited. It's not even finished. So I've already gone back through and it is what of the month? It is, what's the date? I don't even know the date. I'm not terrible. The 7th. So they've already gotten the first 7 chapters and I've already gone back now and added more red herrings and things as I'm writing it. So and at the end, they'll get the full book. But yeah.
So. I love that. And that's something that if I do book 4, which I probably will, but when I feel like every book I do, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this again. Anyway, because it's a lot.
But some authors won't do that. Like they're like, I am not going to put this book up. It would not be perfect and and I'm not perfect. I am so far from perfect and I don't care. And so, they'll get the final version, but people are like, and you don't edit it. I'm like, no, I don't edit it. I just stick it up and just hope for the best.
and that's so funny. So like book 4 is going to be RV trip related around the US. And of course, everyone always asks me like, how much is truth and how much is fiction in my books? Cause I'm like, well, there's always truth in every fiction. And like, people try to figure it out, but you can write what you know. And I think that like, that's something that I've thought about doing with book 4, maybe as I'm traveling, doing progressive chapters that aren't edited, just start to do these stories and share with people and then maybe put together in the end, like what makes the most sense or what people like the most or that could be interesting.
But then of course, Violet, her story does get published after it's been edited and all that good stuff. So, so Betty loves Kenny and Poppy. Papa, thank you, Duke is my favorite. That's the dog in the Kenny Lowry series.
Yes. And we have a question from Bobby. When you write, do you let the story dictate how the mystery evolves?
So that is something I do. I actually like that. Like I was just explaining, like I thought for sure she was the sister or she is not the sister. So what happens is that I always know who dies, who the victim is, and I always know at least 3 or 4 suspects and their motive and the means. And then I always know who the killer is. Oh, goodness. I am so sorry. That was my mother. I should have turned off my phone. Are you there? Yeah. So what happened was that I always know those things. And I generally know where I want it to start in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But I might do the first, 7 or 8 chapters with one-liners written out. And then I'm pretty much a pantser after that. So Just like the serial, I call it the daily serial for it's Columbus Day Conundrum. And I write it daily and it just, whatever comes to me, comes to me. But I know in my mind, I have to go visit these suspects. I have to get these things weaved in. But so I pretty much let it go. But generally, it's the same suspects, victim, and the killer.
Yeah, so. I love that. Okay, so I mean, I could talk to you all evening, but I think as we're kind of coming to a close, I would love for you to share with those folks that are tuning in a tip a writing tip, because I think that like you have all the readers that are tuned in, but I do think that there's so many people that have a book in their heart that they haven't written yet, or maybe they have, or maybe they're working on. And I don't know if you have a, let me do this. It could be a writing tip or it could be a different tip. If you want to give people a different tip.
No, I could do a writing tip, but and I always get an eye roll, from writers. Well, first off, I don't believe in the muse. But for me, this is a job now. My husband he works for me. This is our job, and this is how we pay our bills now. And so it's a job for me. And I just can't imagine going to my boss and saying, the muse just didn't hit today. It can't work. That just to me does not work for me. So if you're going to be a writer and if you're going to want to publish something, it's a job. And you have to, like I could hang out with my Patreon readers and my friends all day long and be happy, but that's not going to get the words written. That's just a small portion. My friends on my Facebook page and my friends in my Patreon are just a small portion of all the people that buy my books. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people on my newsletter are not even on social media. And I'm like, what? And so, that's way bigger than what I've got on social media. And so I still have to produce books because that's what they want. They don't want to know Tonya Kappes. They don't want me. I want to know them. I want to be all up in their crawl. I want to know everything about them. Where they live. I have a birthday. I send out over 3,000 to 5,000 birthday cards a month to readers that I've also been doing for 10 years. I want to know when their birthday is, their blood type. When can I come visit? When can they come visit me? But I have readers that don't want that. And I have probably 90% of those are those readers, and they want the books. And so when you do this for a job, you have to write the books. So I would suggest every day sitting down to write. I don't care how painful it is, but you have to write. You have to give the product. And the product in our industry is writing. So when you sat down during COVID and said to yourself, I don't know if we said this before or on the live stream here, when you said, I said to myself, I want to write 1,000 words a day. I was so happy to hear that. That makes my heart happy because, I know that is what gets the product out. And it's what will, not only it's your passion, it shows through your writing, that makes readers love you even more because they can feel it. And, it helps me. Again, I say to myself, what is your why? If it's to make money, forget it. But if you've got a really strong why, and my why is still one reader. It's not 2, it's not 10, it's 1. And it's the one reader that will email me like today and said, oh, I got my birthday card. It's the only birthday card I'll get. That's hard, and that to me, even though she didn't say she read my book, and I know she has read a book, but she might not be reading my book now, and that's okay. But I know that today I touched her by her getting a birthday card. So if you keep your why in mind and you write the words, that is my biggest tip, all day long, because you won't be able to do this job if you don't write the words.
Yeah.
And I write about 5,000 words a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I aspire someday. Hopefully, I won't have to have a day job. I'll be able to just write.
You're going to be traveling in that camper, which you're so lucky that you get to do your day job.
I'm really lucky. It's a lot of work and logistics, but I'm really lucky. And
I love that.
My pup, and she's amazing.
That.
Yeah. And I have also heard from another author, I think it was on Friends in Fiction. I forget which author said this, but to touch your manuscript every day. So it's like you just need to stay in it. Like I feel like, whether you're writing actively, whether you're researching, whether you're drinking wine, for my on the Texas wine trail. But I think that, just staying in it helps you to be invested in. And for me, when anytime I have a block, like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like writing or whatever. Once I start and I sit down with the characters, all of a sudden they take over and they just kind of write themselves.
Yeah.
They're real interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's
That's
like,
another thing. I don't believe in writer's block. I know I get the eye roll about that too. I believe that when you have writer's block, that something's gone wrong in your story. And I
mm,
always say to people, go back and just reread everything.
yeah,
Reread everything that you've written from the beginning to where you are now. I don't care if you're 50 pages in, I don't care if you're 100 pages in. There's you somewhere something's gone wrong and you've lost the connect with the story and the characters in your head. That's the block. There is no block. You have disconnected. So if you go back through, you're like, oh, yes. And then it will flow more. So there's another writer tip. But
oh,
again, I get a lot of writers that give me the eye roll, but that's okay. I'm fine. I'm
I,
fine.
when you're stuck and you're working that hard, then maybe it's not supposed to happen that way. And like, I feel like for
Right.
me, it seems like if I can't see the
Yeah.
scene, then I can't describe it. Then it doesn't make
Oh,
sense.
yeah,
And,
for
you know,
sure.
and I'll plot it. I do kind of 50-50 like you, plotting and pantsing.
Hmm.
But I got to parts of my book, like I thought I had it all figured out how I was going to do this. And then I start writing and I'm like, wait a second. How can they be there when this thing happened and it's this time of day? Crap. And then I like, have you know,
Yeah.
but it's
I know that feeling well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you're like, dang it, okay, let me think about this. And then I'm like walking around the house talking to myself, talking
Oh,
it out, and my dog's laughing.
yes, you need to dictate that because I love dictating because I do that. Like I will dictate when I'm walking, but it's not really dictating. It's like, okay, this is going to happen and this is going to wait. And I always, and those are little extra things I put up on Patreon and they get a kick out of it. They're like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh. I'm like, here's a little dictation of me. Wait. And half the time it never happens in the book, but it's me walking it out, talking it out. I walk in my woods. I will ask Eddie something and about it. And he's not good at that. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen because this would happen, and then it just starts me off. So definitely,
100%.
yeah,
And I think it's funny too because I think that people like I don't mind people to know that I get stumped on things or whatever. But I think
yeah,
also readers are
no,
really smart. And the thing is, if you think, oh, they're not going to notice that little tip that she had, the flash bulb on the camera, but it was daytime or whatever it is, you're like, whatever little thing, readers will pick up on that and they will point it out.
every time, yes, and that's okay. I love that. So I love that they love the details. It's so good.
I love Shirley saying that we need to visit Cat's Paw Wine Rock Hill. Yes, I love South Carolina. In fact, I'm going to
Yes,
be spending the first part of the year in my RV in Charleston around. So I don't know where Rock Hill is, but I will look this
I'm
way
going
up.
to South Carolina next week.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, and let's see. Jeannie says sometimes inspiration strikes her in the middle of shopping. She's scrambling for people to write it down. Oh,
That's right. That's
uh,
right. Oh, Jeannie, she knows I'm a squirrel. She gave me this cutest little squirrel because I'm always like talking like I am with you with them, and we're all on Zoom. We're all on
yeah.
Zoom, and then I'll be telling a story. I'm like, oh, and then I'll go off on another story. I'm like, oh, but then back to this story because I'm a squirrel. But they'll always come back around, Heather. I'll always come back around. So Jeannie, she's
It might,
sweet. I love meeting
it
her.
might take a hot minute, but you'll get there.
I'll get there. There's always a circle around. I always say I make a long story instead of shorter, longer.
Yes. What is that? My favorite quote that it's sometimes it's necessary to go a long distance out to travel back a short distance correctly. So
Yeah, always. It's always better when you get their scenery.
yes, yes. Okay, well, I could keep this going forever, but like I
I
think
know.
we got to
This
get
is
to
what happens.
this is so much fun talking to you. Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you.
Most everyone who's tuned in already knows about your books, already knows about you, and knows about your
Oh,
page,
I'm glad to be here.
all that. Yeah. And do you want to just share like what the best ways to reach you are for people who don't know you, for people?
Sure. So I am everywhere. Um, you just have to Google Tonya Kappes. You'll find me somewhere. But I'm mainly I've talked about Patreon. I'm mainly on my website. I have a very active newsletter. I put 2 newsletters out a week, which some people are like, what? But I always put 4 books on sale. So that's where they are first. And then a big box set on sale, plus audiobooks on sale every week. So that's the best way to get those. And then Facebook, I'm there every day as well as Instagram. And I'm also on YouTube. So, I'm just kind of everywhere. So
I love
all
it.
the links, all the places, just Google me. And of course, all the links we found on our website, but it's a website. It's
Yeah.
not me really chatting or going live. because I go live a lot in my pedal boat when I'm on my pond or, walking in the woods or again, doing dishes.
I love it.
Oh,
Hopefully we'll get to.
especially in the camper. We do that a lot.
Yes, I hope that we can meet up at some point. I was thinking of trying to
Anytime.
organize a book camporee with authors who write books that are set in RVs. Do some sort of
Yes.
somewhere. So,
So
maybe
have you ever read Sue Ann Jafarian?
no.
Okay, so she writes full time in the novella in her novel RV, and she also has I think it's a Substack maybe, but she writes cozy mysteries. And I just actually gave her a cover quote for her book. I don't remember what she's traditionally published and self published, but she wrote a thing called Sleeping Around. It's her memoir, and I was just so lucky to be able to read that and give her a cover quote. And so she has been doing this probably for, 7 or 8 years. I can't remember how long. And it was fascinating to me. And she retired, and now she travels all over in the novella, her and her cat. So she has a lot of writer friends that she's met along the way. And there's a lot of writers at RV that a lot of people don't know.
I think so too, but I don't think that there's like a specific like RV like camporee get together book.
No.
You could all camp out in RVs and you could swap and do book authors.
Yes. Oh, I'm in a lot of camp stores and I love it. And that's the best. Like I had this one lady say to me, "What do you write?" And the campground owners, they were like, "Oh, that's time you should write the campground series." And she goes, "Oh, do you write anything with knitting?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, let me tell you my knitting story." Back to when I needed the hobby. I said, "No, I do not knit." And so she said, "Oh, well, I probably wouldn't read one of your books." I'm like, "Okay, but just in case, I'll give you one." And because campgrounds now have little libraries, so I always make sure I take books and stick in the little libraries. And I said I was going to stick it in the library, but I'm going to let you have it. And so about 3 weeks later, she messages me on Facebook and she said, "Oh my God, I love your books. I have already read through 6 of the camper series. I'm starting on the other ones. And I've got my book club is going to be doing your books." And I've seen her since at campgrounds. And like she'll message me. She's like, "I'm going to Sandy Springs this weekend. Are you going?" I'm like, "No, but I'm going this weekend." So they've come and we've come. We've all become friends. And it's just so much fun being in campgrounds. It's got the best people.
I love that.
I love it.
I will if I organize. I've done a lot of event organizing in the past. So if I do something, I'm going to reach out to you. We're going to have to.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
There's a couple, Renee George and Brenda Novak. Brenda, I definitely want to reach out to as well. I'm going to try to get her on here for an interview. So I will ping her. But I'll do a shameless plug really quick and show everyone the covers of my books.
Yeah, go ahead. Beautiful.
And I finally got into Camp Finfo here in Waco. I'm going to be getting into some KOA camps. So it's going to be pretty fun here in Texas. But you'll see Texas Wine Trail series. Hallmark, it's a fictional story, real places, and delicious wine. So this third one, Cactus Cradle, is the one that's coming out in October. So it's just a fun, lighthearted story. And you get to take a little travel tour for anyone who's interested in the wine trail in Texas or Fredericksburg and the area. There's restaurants, there's other stuff in the books. So
I love it. They're beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tonya, so much. I just love this chat and really inspiring. I'm so much to take away. I definitely going to reach back.
I can be a lot. I know I can be a lot.
You brought everything I expected and more, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you.
So, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And to everyone else.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Yes, all the wonderful folks who joined in. Thank you for all of your comments. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a great evening, and maybe we'll do this again sometime in the future. So, bye. Thank you.